Well, hello everyone, this is Brother D, and once again the airplanes are still down for maintenance and it's another beautiful day. So I'm here at the Fagan Branch Reservoir on the Gorley Trail, and I'm here to share about a recent experience I had. Are you someone who spends hours upon hours on your computer or your device drooling over airplanes on Trade-A-Plane, Barnstormers, or even Craigslist? Well, today I want to tell about an experience I had with Craigslist. So I recently drove 150 miles to go check out an airplane, and it was a 1962 Cessna 150B, and it was listed on Craigslist for $10,000. Well, I've heard you got to be careful about purchasing anything on Craigslist, but I thought it would be worth the drive to go and look at what might be a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity or a once-in-a-lifetime deal. Well, before I went, I talked with the owner on the phone, and so I knew up front that the plane had 1,900 hours or more on the engine since major overhaul. I also knew that 2 of the cylinders had compressions in the low 60s. The numbers should have been somewhere in the mid-70s according to a general rule of thumb, but I've been reading some articles that say that relates mainly to Lycoming engines, and that Continental engines will run even with compressions in the mid-50s. I've also been reading that airplanes can be pushed way past their TBO, or their time before overhaul. Pilots will buy planes with really high time, they'll fly them for a few hundred hours, and then they'll sell them for basically the same price they paid for them. And that way they get really low-cost flight hours. So with this information in mind, I thought I would at least go check it out. I mean, how can you go wrong with a $10,000 airplane? So when I arrived, the guy let me look it over, and afterwards I asked if we could take it out for a test flight, and he said no, we couldn't do that because he had recently lost his medical, and there was no way he was going to let me fly it. So we got in the plane and he couldn't get it started. He just kept cranking and cranking and cranking, and I would call that strike number 1. Well, after 4 or 5 minutes, he finally got it started. As we began taxiing, I asked him if all the avionics worked, to which he said no, the transponder doesn't work. Well, I already knew if I bought the plane I would have to do a ADS-B update for 2020, and I was hoping to do a U avionics installation, which would have taken around maybe $2,000. So with an inoperative transponder, I would have to completely replace the entire unit, which would be $3,500 or more, and for me, that was strike number 2. He then let me begin taxiing from the right seat, and when I tried out the brakes, I noticed they hardly worked. In fact, they went all the way to the floor. So I would call that strike number 3. It also had some problems tracking straight, so when we got back to the hangar and he shut the engine down, I jumped out and I looked at the front tire and noticed that on one side of the tire, the tread was really worn down. So that meant that something was out of alignment. So I walked back from the plane to get a better perspective, and that's when I noticed that the front fork was bent. So that is strike number 4. And while I was focused on the tires, I took a look at the rear tires and noticed that they were halfway flat with huge cracks in them where they were dry rotted. So that was strike number 5. So the owner of the plane told me that just 3 days prior to me showing up, he had an annual inspection. And so here I am thinking, if a mechanic signed off on a plane that had these kind of problems, what else did he overlook? Granted, these weren't airworthiness issues, but they were still safety hazards. I ended up thanking him for his time, and I even offered to give him $100 because I didn't want to be seen as one of those tire kickers that the aviation community dislikes so much. Anyway, he refused to take the cash. I went home and began researching the repairs and updates that I felt were necessary, and that $10,000 airplane suddenly became a $16,000 airplane, assuming that nothing else went wrong. If a cylinder or 2 went out, that price would jump by a few $1,000s more. If you keep your eyes open, there are Cessna 150s that come up on the market with around 500 hours since major overhaul and in a whole lot better condition for around $20,000. After what I experienced, I'm under the impression that it's probably better to get the $20,000 plane and save myself the hassle of doing all the repairs. Also knowing that the $20,000 airplane has probably been better maintained with less hidden surprises. I'm sharing this experience as food for thought and as a word of caution concerning those really good deals. I hope this video will be of some help if you're in the market to buy an airplane and you're hoping to find one really cheap. Once again, this is Brother D, and if you found this information helpful or even somewhat amusing, be sure to like, subscribe, and share this video.